Scott Adams, the man behind the Dilbert cartoon, had a successful career as of this past Friday, emphasis on had. His comic strip was published in hundreds of newspapers, thousands, I think, actually. Emphasis on was. Today, his career is effectively over. In the span of 2 or 3 days, he was dropped by every major newspaper and most of the non-major ones, too. And then finally last night, dumped by Andrews McMeel Universal, which is Dilbert's longtime distributor. They also have severed ties with Scott Adams. It's one of the fastest and most thorough cancellations we've yet seen, rivaled perhaps only by the short span of time when Kanye West lost well over half his net worth, I think even more than that. For Scott Adams, this cancellation was prompted by comments that he made on his YouTube live stream. And this was a live stream that was published, I think, on Wednesday, and then for whatever reason took a couple days before people noticed it, and then they noticed it, and he was canceled. On this live stream, he advised that white people should, quote, get the hell away from black people. He warned that, quote, there's no fixing this, and that, quote, white citizens can no longer help, quote, black citizens. Now, if you're curious about this he's referring to, what exactly we can't fix, according to Adams, the Daily Wire covers that in its report. Quote, in a Real Coffee with Scott Adams video posted on Wednesday, Adams discussed a Rasmussen poll that nearly half of black Americans were unable to agree with the phrase, it's okay to be white. Adams' video, in which he suggested that poll results indicate that blacks are a, quote, hate group, went viral. Adams in the video joked that he's been identifying as black for some time, but must have accidentally joined a hate group based on a recent Rasmussen poll. The poll, which surveyed 1,000 people, showed that 53% of black people agreed with the statement, it's okay to be white, leaving 47% unable to say they agree. Now, call me a contrarian. I've been called worse than that. But it would seem to me that the headline of this story is not what the Dilbert guy said on some YouTube video, given that he's just one guy expressing a viewpoint that is clearly rejected by every powerful institution in our society. But rather, the story is the survey, which would seem to indicate widespread racial animosity in the American population. So when I heard this, that's the first thing that I noticed. I said, well, wait a second. What about this survey? The mainstream media would have us believe that the roundly rejected and condemned opinion of one man is a greater concern and a much more urgent national crisis than the racist viewpoints revealed in the poll that he was reacting to. But I would argue that we should probably take some time. I mean, once everyone has had their turn jumping on the Scott Adams dog pile, and I think by now everyone has had their turn because that's where the cancellation goes. Like one guy says something that lots of people don't like, and then everyone jumps on it. It's like even after 3 or 4 days and 10 million people have already jumped on the dog pile and said, I too disagree with this statement. I think it's horrible. Still, someone else has to come along and say, I also disagree. Well, now that we've done that, can we talk about this survey and what it purports to reveal? In fact, I think the time to talk about it is probably right now. So let's do that. Looking at that Rasmussen poll again, it asks respondents whether they agree or disagree with the statement, it's okay to be white. Now, among black respondents, a slim majority, which is 53%, strongly or somewhat agree that it's okay to be white, but 26% strongly or somewhat disagree, while 21% aren't sure. That leaves, as we said, 47% who cannot definitively say that it's okay to be white, which is to say they cannot agree that white people should exist, because that would be the implication. If it's not okay to be a member of a certain race, then what you're saying is that it's not okay that that race exists. In fact, even among white people, only 67% would strongly agree that it's okay for them to be the race that they are. Another 14% somewhat agree. Is it okay to be what you are? Maybe, sort of. Leaving 20% who cannot say that they agree at all, that it's okay for them to be the race that they are. Now, if these numbers are accurate, they reveal a truly dangerous level of hatred and animosity against whites, and even shared by a large percentage of whites against themselves as well. Now, you could argue that this poll only surveyed 1,000 people, doesn't represent a true and accurate cross-section of the American people, therefore. You could also argue that Rasmussen is a conservative firm. I've heard this on the left. It's a conservative, a right-wing firm. And so they conducted the survey in a way that would skew the results in their ideological favor. Now, on that second point, if you're right that they were skewing the results to get, get the results that they favor, it only makes the results more concerning. After all, Rasmussen reported these results triumphantly as an indication that most Americans reject woke racial indoctrination. So if they were trying to prove anything with the survey, they were trying to prove that anti-white racism is not widespread, as that would show that normal Americans reject wokeism. Their own headline about the poll results, that's what it declares. Americans reject woke racial indoctrination. And yet, even in that effort, they inadvertently showed the opposite. The sample size is small, though. That I would grant. But the whole science of polling is to ascertain general sentiments by quantifying the opinions of a small group. Now, your faith in that science or pseudoscience may be rather limited. I mean, I know that mine is. Though I can't help but notice that many people who regularly tout poll results are, when it comes to this particular poll, eager to declare that the results must be wrong. I'm willing to listen to an argument that the results are wrong because I'm naturally skeptical of all polls. But that would require contrary evidence, right? Evidence that anti-white beliefs are not widespread. But I haven't seen any skeptics provide such evidence. So you could say that, well, no, there's no way that many black people feel that way about white people, or even that many white people feel that way about themselves. There's no way that's true. Okay, well, why do you think it's not true? Like, based on what? You're assuming that it's not true. Based on what do you assume that? Indeed, the evidence seems to go the other way. What makes the results especially disturbing is that they are not a shock, that they don't seem to be an aberration. Instead, they comport with much of what we see in society, including from other polls. Just recently, the Washington Post conducted their own survey, finding that 70% of black Americans believe that half of all whites are white supremacists. Over 49% over 40% of black respondents claim that all or most whites are white supremacists. In fact, across two different polls, the number of black Americans who believe that it's not okay to be white and that most white people are white supremacists is almost identical. They're off by a few percentage points. That's either an incredible coincidence or an indication of something very troubling. But we don't need polls. You could see the anti-white sentiment everywhere in plain sight. Take this infamous video, which happened to go viral this week as well, along with the Scott Adams stuff, where anti-white racism is casually paraded right in front of our faces. Watch this.
What are white people superior at?
What exactly are white people superior at?
They're real good at violence.
Violence. Genocide.
It's like stealing people's lives just because they feel like it.
If you are white and you know this is happening and you say nothing, then you're a killer too.
What exactly are white people superior at?
Insecurity. Pretending.
Fear.
Being fearful of nothing. Being ignorant.
Blame.
Letting their egos control their every move. Superior at being.
What exactly are white people superior at?
Oppression. Gaslighting.
Lack of empathy.
Intellectualizing oppression.
Did I say oppression?
What exactly are white people superior at?
Taking what's not there. Taking
our ideas.
Copycatting.
gentrification.
Appropriating things that do not belong to them.
Taking over other people's cultures and making you believe that they invented it.
Maybe they're thinking of it as repurposing. It's like recycle and repurpose.
As my grandma would say, them white folk, they'll take it if you don't copyright it.
They are very good at destruction of land, destruction of people, destruction of humanness.
Republican, whether you're Democrat, whether you're conservative, like white people are really good at upholding white supremacy.
How about claiming that, they are actually a whole separate race, when actually white DNA comes from the black female?
So what exactly are white people superior at?
Honey, lying, stealing, and cheating.
Manipulation. Withholding information.
Lying.
Telling lies.
Now, the point is not just what the bigots in the video said. It's that the video exists in the first place. You would never see a mainstream outlet, or even a non-mainstream outlet, produce and publish a video with the races swapped. And that is so obvious that it's become a truism. The racial double standard is so apparent that even people who oppose the double standard get sick of hearing others point it out because, we know it. But the double standard, so clear to everyone, is yet more evidence to support the results of the poll. The reaction to Scott Adams proves it too. Now, we all know that if Scott had darker skin and had instead been advising blacks to get the hell away from whites, he would not have lost a single newspaper. If anything, he would have gained a few more. We know for a fact, this is not me assuming this. We know for a fact that it's true because race hustlers on the other side regularly declare that black people are not safe around white people. And this is something that's said all the time, despite the fact that there is zero evidence to support that. But this is something that's always said. And none of the people who say that ever suffer the slightest consequence for saying so. Why? Well, because the most powerful forces in our society have been working for years to get exactly the results that we see in that Rasmussen poll. That's perhaps the best evidence that the poll is tragically accurate because it simply reveals the racial animosity and anti-white hostility that our culture has been dead set on instilling in black and white people alike. This doesn't emerge from a vacuum. Kids today are raised in schools and they consume media and they watch films and shows that all carry the explicit message that white people are history's great villains, that white people are inherently racist, that whiteness is a scourge, a disease. In fact, a psychoanalyst named Donald Moss published a paper a couple of years ago that argued explicitly that. Here's the first line of the abstract in this paper. Whiteness is a condition one first acquires and then one has, a malignant parasitic-like condition to which white people have a particular susceptibility. The last line laments that despite their best efforts, they've yet to come up with, quote, a permanent cure for whiteness. Those are the exact words, permanent cure. If that sounds genocidal, it's because it is. Just like the statement, it's not okay to be white, reveals genocidal hatred, as there is only one cure for a race that it's not okay to be. Right? If it's not okay to be a member of a certain race, well, how do you cure that? What do you do about that? This is what's brewing. One racial group has been tagged as the enemy, the cancer, the cause of all our social ills. Far from the first time in history that a racial group has been scapegoated in this way. And so we know from history where it leads. And I think perhaps this is what we should really be talking about. And that'll do it for this portion of the show. Let's move over to the members block. If you're not a member yet, you can become a member and use code Walsh at checkout for 2 months free on all annual plans. Hope to see you over there. If not, talk to you tomorrow. Godspeed.